Welcome to the Pint Glass Football Podcast.
Pint Glass Football. I'm your host, Brad Fowler. What's up, PGF Nation? Today, we continue with our NFL division previews, and today we cover the AFC East. Some of our predictions of these teams might surprise you guys, but joining me like always, my co-host, Alex Higdon. Alex, what is going on?
Last year, you guys killed me because I picked the Pats to win a division, and of course, they did the complete opposite. So we'll see if you're going to make fun of me this year or not.
All right, you got a bold take for us, Alex? You got a hot take like New England this year, or are you gonna?
No, not yet. Not in this division. I'll say that much. Not in this division. I gave one last week. If you didn't hear it, tune in, go to the page, you'll hear it. But not for this division.
All right, man. Well, let's jump into it. Let's start the place that you know well, Alex, New York, the New York Jets here. This is a fascinating team. I'm excited to jump into this team here because they had big expectations last year, obviously going to get Aaron Rodgers, a team that felt like they were a quarterback away from being a contender. Obviously, that got derailed very early on, just a couple plays into the season with the injury. Now he's back, and I think the expectations seem a little bit more tempered this year. It doesn't feel like there's as much hype around this Jets team with Aaron Rodgers coming back than there was last year. Now, they've had some key additions. Wide receiver Mike Williams comes over from the Chargers. They've upgraded the offensive line with Morgan Moses, and, of course, they drafted Olu Fashanu out of Penn State. They bring over the veteran Tyron Smith from Dallas, guard John Simpson. Also, on the defensive side, they bring over Hassan Reddick from the Eagles. Now, they had some key departures in edge rusher Bryce Huff, defensive end John Franklin Myers, and, of course, Zach Wilson no longer there. I'm not sure that matters too much, but I think with the Jets losing Bryce Huff in free agency, I think trading for Hassan Reddick at an affordable price tag, I think was a really good move. And I think with this upgraded offensive line, 3 new starters, big questions for this team, Alex, but I think there's some big expectations for a reason.
The Jets are an interesting team. I'm a person that kind of likes smooth offseason and smooth training camp with not a lot of noise. I don't like the fact that there's been some dust-ups. There's been a few things that have been rumblings around. I know most people don't care because it's not quote-unquote on the field, but when you're in New York, when you're dealing with Aaron Rodgers, everything is going to be a thing bigger than it was when it was in Green Bay. So the back and forth that we've been seeing going on, and Aaron saying that he didn't even know that he wasn't going to be playing, and these lines of communication, I feel when you bring a player like this in, you need to be on your P's and Q's in what you're doing. You need to be very communicative and know everything that's going on. That's number one. Now, when we talk about on the field and the actual plays, you went through the entire list of everything that's going on. I think the biggest addition to this team is not anything from the skill positions, because you even have to count Aaron Rodgers coming back as a new addition because he wasn't there last year. But this offensive line, getting Tyron Smith, drafting Olu Fashanu, getting John Simpson from Baltimore, trading for Morgan Moses from Baltimore, who's a stalwart, Elijah Vera Tucker, who's looked like a good draft pick and getting better, and then Joe Tippmann last draft. This offensive line is prime and ready to go, where injuries don't look like, God forbid, if someone got injured, that they won't miss a beat because they have fortified it up front and they have fortified it on the second level. And I think that's the biggest thing that this team has done, which will lead to their success over everything else. But we will mention, and we have mentioned, possible rookie of the years, Malachi Corley, and his Deebo Samuel-ish type of running after the catch that I think is going to make Aaron Rodgers make him a favorite target of his as they go through the season. Mike Williams, I'm sorry, I don't really care. He's been hit or miss for the most part, even though he was a good prospect coming out of Clemson, but he's hit or miss. The defense, they did lose Bryce Huff, but they lost Bryce Huff in return for Hassan Reddick. So I would have liked to have seen them go and get a safety. I think that would have been the only thing that I might have done was just maybe drafted a safety and just kind of fortify, and at least on the second level, meaning that second string, a guy that could possibly be a starter maybe in that fourth or fifth round. But hey, they've been lights out defensively basically since Salah's gotten there. Now that they have, well, let's just say everybody healthy, I have to say I have the Jets at 11-6 going into this year.
Wow. Okay. Big expectations. I like it, Alex, because I think to your point, and like we've talked about here, with this offensive line, if they can come together, because adding the pieces is one thing, but offensive line is one of those units that usually takes a little bit of time to gel. If they can come together, if Aaron Rodgers can stay healthy, of course, and like to your point, I think we know this defense, I think, has the players to be one of the best in the NFL. I like the depth they have at running back. It's added some guys in the draft, especially with Breece Hall coming back. Now, look, Breece Hall's numbers last season behind a bad offensive line and bad quarterback play, he had nearly 1,000 yards rushing, 591 yards receiving, and 9 touchdowns. Can you say fantasy alert? Watch out for Breece Hall because this guy could have a monster season this year in this offense with Aaron Rodgers and an improved offensive line. The over-under season win total is 9.5. Obviously, Alex, you're taking the over and feeling pretty good about it. I'm taking the over too. I think Aaron Rodgers, with his veteran experience, I think that's really going to help the offensive line come together here because his quick decision-making and his ability to read the defense and make protection calls at the line of scrimmage, I think is really being overlooked here. When you have a veteran like this who's seen it all, that can help improve an offensive line play alone, not to mention the upgrades they have here. Now, the defense, like I said, I think they could finish as a top 5 unit. I think the Jets win this division, Alex, and I think they make some noise. The Miami Dolphins, Alex, this team, some of their key additions this offseason, linebacker Jordan Brooks, okay, whatever. Edge Chop Robinson, a guy that neither one of us really liked coming out of the draft. I think he's a workout warrior who really didn't do anything at Penn State. Go back to the draft episodes, of course, if you want to hear our opinions on that. Safety Jordan Poyer, good player but past his prime. Tight end Jonnu Smith. Wide receiver Odell Beckham. Look, we're going to see how much Odell Beckham has left in the tank. I think at this point, it's a lot more sizzle than steak at this point in his career. Now, key departures is really where it gets interesting for the Dolphins. They lose Andrew Van Winkle, really underrated player on the defense, cornerback Xavier Howard, guard Robert Hunt, linebacker Jerome Baker, safety Brandon Jones, defensive tackle Christian Wilkins, who's quite frankly one of the best defensive tackles in the game, and defensive tackle Raekwon Davis. Not to mention offensive lineman Connor Williams, who I think leaves a big hole for them in the interior of that offensive line. Alex, this has not been a good offseason on paper for the Miami Dolphins at all.
Yeah, I mean, let's just talk about the paper before we even get to the actual field. Like you said, let's also talk about Jalen Phillips is on physically unable to perform, coming off injury. Bradley Chubb, physically unable to perform, coming off injury. So, like you mentioned, in terms of the defense, you know what? And another big thing, before I even get to that, let's talk about the loss of Vic Fangio as well. Now, I know that team was doing a lot, and it may not have looked like a typical Vic Fangio, but Vic Fangio, again, is one of the better defensive coordinators in the past 20 to 25 years. He's also going in, as we know, coaching does matter here. But like I said, a lot of players on the physically unable to perform list, and to the point that they had to go get 38-year-old Calais Campbell off his couch to come in and play because they are just simply undermanned on this defense. Because we actually talked about Bradley Chubb earlier today, Brad. Great prospect, great rookie season, looked like he was going to, but the injuries have just simply slowed this player down. Unfortunately, it's a part of the game. The running backs, I like what they did with getting Jalen Wright to move to the offense. I like what they did with Jalen Wright. Devon Achane, I would say fantasy alert, but those injuries will always hurt you, so I can't take him in the first 4 rounds. And then Raheem Mostert. So all 3 of these guys, Jalen Wright aside, at least the first 2 are injury prone. But you're right. This offensive line, I don't know. I don't know what to say about it. Teron Armstead was a stalwart. He has been underperforming. He's an older player, and they haven't been able to really replenish the offensive line the way that they need to. I know they drafted Patrick Paul in the second round. Perhaps he can be somebody. So outside of, and this is going to sound funny based upon 2 years ago what Tua's career was looking at, based on where it is now after getting a $212 million contract extension, the offense, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, and the combination of the running game is really carrying this team, because defensively, I don't think they're going to be good at all, because the back end of their schedule is a bit of a gauntlet, and especially when you get to some of these places, they're going to have to be playing in bad weather for the most part. They're at Green Bay right after Thanksgiving. Then they're home with New York, and we know what that defense is like. The new and improved and surging Houston Texans. Then they also have San Francisco. Then they end the season going to Cleveland with that defense, and then going to New York. That back end of that after Thanksgiving, I literally could see 6 losses in a row, Brad. So I'm not sure what Miami is this season, especially if they end up getting grounded due to weather and good defenses. But right now, I have them. I'm teetering right now on 7-10 for the Miami Dolphins.
Yeah, look, this team was a paper tiger last year. And I think with all the key departures of players that we mentioned, I really don't have a lot of faith that this team is going to be any better this year. And I think the offensive line is a huge concern when you're talking about a quarterback in Tua who's had problems staying healthy in the past, a guy that doesn't have a whole lot of escapability. He needs a clean pocket to stand in and deliver the football on time. This offense is very timing and rhythm based. And I think when you have a guy like Tua, if they can get pressure on him consistently, which I think this year could be a real problem for them, I think it really throws off this track meet offense that we've seen in the last couple of years. Now, look, Tyreek Hill, Waddle, one of the best 1-2 wide receiver combos in the league. And we know Tua is capable of playing at a high level with these guys. You mentioned Devon Achane, Raheem Mostert, that backfield. They have a lot of firepower on offense. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But once again, I have real question marks about the protection. And look, Mike McDaniel, one of the best play callers, one of the best play designers in this league. But you mentioned Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips, both coming off of injuries. Look, these guys are going to need to bounce back to top form following these significant injuries, because really outside of Javon Holland, this defense is really weak on paper. And I think it could be one of the worst defenses in the NFL this year. So that offense better be good. I mean, they better be putting up some points, because I think they're going to have to carry this team. I have major concerns when talking about the Miami Dolphins this year. I think it's a big step back year. I'm with you, Alex. The over-under season win total is 9.5. I'm taking the under. Look, too many question marks on defense and too many question marks on both lines of scrimmage, because I don't think they're going to be able to protect their quarterback, and I'm not sure they're going to be able to get after other quarterbacks. Plus, quite frankly, Alex, I think it's tough for me to really trust Tua stays healthy. Look, of course I'm not rooting for that. We want the guy to be healthy and have a good year. But this is a guy who really had his first healthy season going all the way back to his days at Alabama, now playing in front of this shaky offensive line. I would be really concerned if I'm a Miami Dolphins fan. I'm surprised the win total's all the way up at 9.5. I am hammering the under on them. Did you know that Pint Glass Football is more than just this podcast? We have an exclusive newsletter. Sign up for free at pintglassfootball.com to receive articles and insights delivered straight to your inbox. But wait, there's more. We're excited to announce our brand new YouTube channel. Not only can you listen to our podcast on YouTube, but you'll also find exclusive video content waiting for you. So hit the pause button right now and go subscribe to our newsletter, and hit that subscribe button on YouTube to stay connected with the latest football news and our exclusive content. Underdog Fantasy is the easiest place to play fantasy sports. We personally love the pick'em game. Just pick between 2 and 5 players to build a pick'em entry. Pick whether your favorite players will have a higher or lower stat total in this week's game for a chance to win big. You can win up to 20 times your money in a single night. Download the Underdog Fantasy app and sign up today with promo code PGF. That's promo code PGF to claim your special pick plus first-time deposit offer up to $250 in bonus cash. The official ticketing app of Pint Glass Football is now SeatGeek. I can't recommend them enough, guys. I've been using SeatGeek for years. You want to go to a game this season? SeatGeek is here to take the confusion out of buying tickets, making sure you get the best seats at the best prices. With SeatGeek, you'll never have to worry about overpaying for tickets again. How? They put a 0 to 10 score on each ticket, so you know you're getting a good deal. But here's the real game changer. You can get $20 off your first ticket purchase with the code PGFPOD. That's right, $20 off with code PGFPOD. This season, make every game day epic with SeatGeek. Download the SeatGeek app and remember to enter the code PGFPOD to grab your $20 discount. Alex, your team, your favorite team in the NFL, the Buffalo Bills.
Hysterical.
I think everybody that follows PGF Nation, everybody that follows on Twitter, I think was starting to wonder if you had some like real beef with the Buffalo Bills because, man, you were absolutely crushing this team all year, predicting their downfall, and it almost came to fruition, Alex. It almost did. They had a big turnaround at the end of the year and kind of saved their season when it looked like it was coming to an end. Interesting offseason for the Bills, though. Coming into this year, I think there's different expectations for this team. The Bills traded away, released, or lost players like Diggs, Poyer, Hyde, Morris, Davis, Floyd, White. I mean, a lot of guys to free agency here. They have replaced a lot of these guys with younger, more affordable options, which look for the future, I think is great. But I think in the short term, it could cost this team a little bit.
So, okay. All right. I have a lot of things to say about the Bills, not most of them good, but I'm going to be fair, and I'm always fair. Buffalo Bills, this is the year that we're going to find out, not necessarily who Josh Allen is, because I believe Josh Allen is 1,000% a top 5 quarterback. We're going to talk about him carrying the team. He is in a similar, and I emphasize similar situation as Patrick Mahomes, sans the coach. We understand the difference between Andy Reid and Sean McDermott, but we're just talking about coming in with very young and new receivers. Keon Coleman, he is I guess like they like to say, a media darling. He's one of the funniest guys. So hopefully he also translate and performs on the field, some things that we hope for. Dalton Kincaid, year 2. Can they use him? Can they not use him? They still have Dawson Knox. The offensive line, I think, is okay. I want to say the offensive line is solid. I do like the drafting of Cedric Van Granger in the 5th round, the center from Georgia. Hopefully he can stay healthy and they can contribute. And I will say one thing. They finally doubled down, I'd like to say. They seem to have found their running back in James Cook. I like the drafting of Ramon Davis, or Ray Davis as they like to call him. Solid guy for the most part. The defense, now that defensive line, hey, you got Rousseau, you got Ed Oliver, and then hopefully some of these other guys can come on and we'll see what Von Miller has left in the tank. Matt Milano, sorry Detroit fans for bringing up bad memories, but Matt Milano, coming back off of injury. Terrell Bernard, who filled in for Matt Milano, looking like he, a 3rd-round pick, a guy that stepped up. I think their biggest issue on the defense is specifically this defensive backfield. We're going to have to see how that front end can help that back end, because the back end of this defense does not look good at all. I like Josh Allen, but this is a time where Josh Allen can prove to me that he's a truck, that he can really just put everything on his back and guide this young offense to another 10 to 11 win season, and they can win the division. However, that is not my prediction. I have Buffalo at 9-8 and missing the playoffs again. Yes, I said it.
This is why people think you're a Bills hater, Alex. This is exactly why. But
I
look,
accept it.
I'm not completely far off from what you're thinking, though, because with a lot of these key departures, like I mentioned, I think it's good that they got younger and got cheaper. I think they needed to, and I think because of that in the short term, there could be a little bit of a slow build for this team. I think the big challenge for them offensively is going to be quarterback Josh Allen needing to really quickly build chemistry with a nearly entirely new set of wide receivers. I think it's a decent group. I like that they brought over Curtis Samuel. I like some of these young players like Keon Coleman. I think they've got some talented guys there, but it's going to take some time to kind of build that chemistry and for them to kind of pick up the offense here. I think Dalton Kincaid, though, is a guy to circle. I think he comes into year 2 with bigger expectations. This is a guy that caught 73 balls on 91 targets in his rookie season in Buffalo. And look, fantasy alert, I think he finishes as a top 3 tight end this year in fantasy football. I think he has a huge year.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you. And I sorry to cut you off, but yeah, I agree with you. But you know what I often think about with this team and new offensive coordinator Joe Brady, you've got to run 12 personnel here. You've got to run 12 personnel here.
I think so. I think it's a great point because I think a big question for me is this offense and what it's going to look like this year from a philosophical standpoint. And I think you're right, Alex, because I think we need to continue to see a more balanced offense like we saw in the second half of last season after they fired their offensive coordinator and James Cook started getting consistent carries. That took a lot of pressure off Josh Allen in the passing game. I think if we see that, and to your point, a lot more 12 personnel, getting the 2 tight ends on the field together, I think it allows you to have run-heavy sets, but being able to pass out of those formations and give you some versatility because you've got 2 good pass-catching tight ends as well. I think it's a really interesting point, Alex. And to your point earlier, can the Bills secondary step up with this remade group? Because they're not going to have the same battle-tested cohesiveness as last year's group. So I think that is a big question mark and a bit of a concern for this team. I think this team still has some talent, but it's a little bit of a rebuild year in a lot of ways, losing a lot of key veterans, bringing in a lot of new faces. The season over-under season win total for them is 10.5. I think that's a little high. I'm with you, Alex. I'm taking the under here on the Bills. I think it could be a little bit of a slow start for them with all these new pieces, trying to put it all together. But I think it's a team that might get better as the year goes on. I think 9 wins is a more realistic expectation for them in trying to fight to get back into the playoffs, most likely as a wild card team. But look, if they miss the playoffs, McDermott is out in Buffalo. All right, last but not least, well, maybe least, we'll see here. New England Patriots. Look, they needed to overhaul this offense. I don't think there's any doubt about it. And they made some key additions to this team. Of course, drafting quarterback Drake May out of North Carolina. They add wide receiver KJ Osborne. They bring in Jacoby Brissett, of course, to be the backup, even though I think he could look like the starter here early on in the season as they get Drake May up to speed. I love the 2 young wide receivers out of the draft, Jalen Polk out of Washington and Javon Baker out of UCF. I think both these guys could be really good rookies for this team. Not a whole lot of key departures for this team, Alex. They lost offensive tackle Trent Brown. Of course, Mac Jones is now going to be Trevor Lawrence's backup over in Jacksonville, and wide receiver Devontae Parker's not there. Who cares? Look, a long road ahead here for this team because this roster still lacks really the talent needed to compete for this division. But now you have Gerard Mayo taking over in New England. But I think this is a nice start in year 1 of the rebuild post-Belichick.
Yeah, you know what? I didn't have a hot take for this division, but I do have a hot take for this team. When the season starts, Matthew Judon will not be on this team. I think he's going to get traded, and I think he should get traded, and they should get some value as they're rebuilding. He should be able to go to a contender. He should be able to swing a 3rd and a 6th or some type of mixture, maybe a 4th and a 6th at minimum for that type of player as an impact player on a team that needs a contending team that needs a pass rusher. But now, with that being said, I have to say, Brad, earlier today we did an exercise where we kind of went through the last, 12 to 15 years of a team's draft. That Patriots draft did not fare well against a lot of other people in terms of what they did in the first round. But in looking at this draft in totality, like you said, we liked a lot what they did in terms of just getting some weapons. Jalen Polk, Javon Baker, we love both of those picks. We've also heard out of the camp, Joe Milton, who they were said should be a tight end, has been performing better than Drake May. I don't know how long that's going to last. So the Patriots are a complete myth. I have no idea that they're in the metaverse. I don't know what they are. I can't say if the defense is going to be good or bad. The only thing that I know that's good about this team is Christian Gonzalez is back. Christian Gonzalez is going to be who I thought he was. So again, with all that being said, just around the entire team, there's not really too much I have to say. I think they're going to struggle in the running game because Ramondre Stevenson and Antonio Gibson, I don't think Antonio Gibson is a good third down back. With Ramondre Stevenson, I think he fits the more Belichickian style. I think they need somebody with a little bit more pop, a little bit more home run ability. And I don't think I think they're going to struggle and rely on the pass a lot more than they will rely on the run. So that'll be interesting to see how quickly Javon Baker and Jalen Polk can get caught up. But I will say one thing, fantasy alert, Hunter Henry, I know he doesn't stay healthy, but this is a guy that's going to get a lot of work based upon these two quarterbacks in that young wide receiver room. It's very young. Hunter Henry is going to get a lot of targets. He's going to get a lot of targets often, specifically from a rookie in Drake May if he starts. And it's specifically a guy in Jacoby Brissett who has a big arm, but a lot of these receivers he may or may not trust early on. So I think Hunter Henry is going to be get a big fantasy bump, especially early on in the season. Other than that, I think this is just a building season. I don't think they're going to be too far off from where they drafted, which was third this season. I currently have the Patriots at 5-12, but I want to say this though. I think they're trending in the right direction just based on the draft picks and trying to get some solid weapons that pop on offense outside of a tight end or a running back that's basically a mutter for the most part.
So I actually am going to disagree with you on Ramondre Stevenson. He was one of my potential bounce back players this year. Once again, guys, check out the newsletter if you want to check out some exclusive content from us. I think he has a bounce back year, and I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that he was the focal point of this offense last year with Mac Jones, a very limited quarterback, very limited wide receiver room, an offensive line that wasn't very good. Well, now you've got a young quarterback that's going to give them some pop and a guy who's got some mobility. Now you've got some young playmakers at wide receiver, and they've made some improvements on the offensive line. I think that's really going to benefit a guy like Ramondre Stevenson, and we're going to see him kind of get back to the player he was the first couple of years in New England. And I think they're going to want to run the ball and have balance to try to protect this young quarterback. So I think he's a guy to circle here. Now, you mentioned star rookie from last year, corner Christian Gonzalez out of Oregon, a guy that we loved in the draft. He looked every bit like he was on his way to being a defensive rookie of the year before the injury. I think the defense has some good players in place. The defense was actually pretty good last year. Retaining safety Kyle Duggar, I think, was huge to keep that defense in that secondary moving in the right direction. And I think pairing him with Peppers in the secondary, I think could actually be a really nice combo. I think the debate here of when to start Drake May is really the story that matters the most in New England. And once again, similar to like what I said on our last episode when talking about Jaden Daniels, the most important thing for New England is not going to be wins or losses. It's going to be, does Drake May look like a young franchise quarterback that you can build around? Does he look like a guy who's going to be a young franchise quarterback in the making here? Because look, he's a high ceiling prospect, a lot of talent, but he needs some refinement. I think playing behind what should be a better offensive line, even though it could be a little bit of a shaky offensive line, but I like that they got him some pieces. I like that they addressed the O-line to try to improve it. Over-under season win total for them is only 4.5 wins. It's actually the lowest number in the NFL. You said 5 wins. Look, I'm with you on this one too, Alex. I'll take the over because I think they can get to 5 or 6 wins. I don't think it's crazy to think that with the defense and some of these new weapons on offense, that they get a few more wins than people expect. They're probably still picking in the top 5. I get that. But to your point, Alex, I think they're moving in the right direction, and that's really all Patriots fans can ask for right now.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. You know what? When you said that you disagree with me, I thought you were disagreeing with me about their record. Now I see you just talking about. I was like, you expect them to have more wins than 5? I was befuddled, beloved. I didn't know what was going to happen next.
If you enjoy the podcast, do us a favor and subscribe, rate, and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. Once again, I'm Brad Fowler. He's Alex Higdon. This is Pint Glass Football, and we'll catch you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Pint Glass Football Podcast. Be sure to subscribe and follow us on Twitter at PGF Podcast.
Zencastr is the ultimate web-based podcasting solution. It provides high-quality audio and video podcast production and hosting. With a full suite of professional tools, podcasters can seamlessly record, produce, and publish studio-quality content all from one dashboard. Zencastr's post-production process takes the headache out of audio production. Set the right podcast loudness and levels while reducing background noise with a click of a button. Coordinating all your guests to record in person is painful and tedious. Easily invite up to 11 participants per recording with one click. Go to zencastr.com/pricing and use my code PGFP, and you'll get 30% off your first 3 months of Zencastr Professional. I want you to have the same easy experiences I do for all my podcasting and content needs. It's time to share your story.